And thank you to everyone who's here. We're really pleased that you're joining today's webinar on the journey around diversity, equity, and inclusion. My name is Suzanne Jacob, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at DHR International. So this conversation that we're going to have today with the Kaleidoscope Group CEO Doug Harris and Senior Consultant Melanie Munoz is one that we've been very excited about. We also have along with us Dwayne Celestin from DHR, who serves as our diversity group practice group leader. I've had the opportunity to hear Doug speak before, and I'm really excited about this conversation around our role as leaders and how we can take our energy and enthusiasm around diversity, equity, and inclusion and turn that into real outcomes for our organizations. The DHR family of companies where I work at DHR International also includes JobPlex and Elevate partners, and we feel that we have a unique opportunity to be supporting our clients on their diversity, equity, and inclusion journey as well. Short term, we do this as executive search consultants, ensuring we develop diverse slates of candidates for senior roles and pipelines of potential future executives. And longer term, we serve as coaches and advisors who help leaders grow and develop. We also see the opportunity for DHR to have a role in supporting the much longer term journey and helping to build the pipeline of leaders who will be creating change for us 10, 20, and 30 years from now. I'm really happy to introduce Melanie Munoz, who'll be acting as our host for today's conversation with Doug and Dwayne. Melanie is a huge proponent of changing the way corporations, governments, and other organizations do business by being more inclusive. She's the manager of strategic partnerships and a senior consultant at the Kaleidoscope Group. In this role, she provides strategic guidance and develops and facilitates educational workshops on various topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Melanie has a Master of Arts degree in psychology with a focus in diversity and inclusion leadership, organizational development, and social psychology. She was recently named one of Chicago's 40 Latinos under 40, highlighting her achievements in the community and as an upcoming leader in Chicago, which is awesome. Go, Melanie. Today's session is intended to be interactive, so you can ask questions of our panelists via the Q&A, and we'll monitor and feed those to Melanie, Doug, and Dwayne. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Melanie, and thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you, Suzanne. Pleasure to be here. I always love bios because they make people sound incredible, right? So I appreciate that and very excited to be here. We love our family over at DHR and excited to be here. So I get to facilitate an incredible conversation with two very, very good friends, also practitioners in their space. And so I'm excited. We're going to try to tone down the fun and get some questions through, but we're still going to have fun. And so I am excited, as Suzanne shared, we're really going to be giving a landscape around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so just as we had been promoting, really honing in on the leadership commitment and buy-in around this work. All of the different areas that we serve are very, very important. How does diversity, equity, and inclusion incorporate in all those spaces, but also how do we truly commit as leaders and buy into this work overall? Also, we want to help support and answer questions around finding the right approach. Every single organization is different. Every single organization is going to have a different approach. And so how do you find the right approach? And ultimately, how do we move forward? What does an action-oriented strategy look like? And true commitment overall to the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey, because it is a journey. We are in a marathon, and it's okay if you're just at the starting line. Just really want to help support your efforts. And so without further ado, I will start to introduce our key experts today. So we have Dwayne from DHR, and as many of you probably have had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with Dwayne. He's a managing director and global diversity practice leader for DHR International, a top 5 global executive search firm. Dwayne has conducted searches in many different sectors: public, private equity, education, and non-for-profit senior leadership roles. Over 70% of his placements have been diverse candidates in the past 3 years. And prior to search, he's spent a number of years, 20 plus years, in marketing, sales, and general management leadership roles in multi different multiple different nations. He's also published 4 books and numerous articles, and he lives here in the Chicagoland area with his 2 adult daughters and a wife. Dwayne, I don't know when you sleep, but congrats, and man, it's just really incredible to have you here. And then I have my CEO and mentor, Doug Harris. Doug is the CEO of the Kaleidoscope Group, and he has spent over 30 years helping clients around the world maximize the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's a proven leader and sought-out speaker, executive coach, and innovator. Doug believes that strong organizations are built by empowered people who understand, respect, and appreciate themselves and everyone around them. And so, as we mentioned, so you have a little bit of a glimpse of Kaleidoscope Group, our firm. We are a full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm headquartered out of Chicago. And so we've done this work here in the U.S. and across about 50 other countries. And so I will let Doug and Dwayne say hello.
Doug, always good to be here. You know, we've collaborated before, and it was time to do it again. It's a different part of the process on a macro basis, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to have you showcase some of your knowledge and skills, and I'll chime in where appropriate, but I think what you have to share will be quite useful for the audience.
Oh, man. Yeah, so Dwayne, you know, we do have a long history in many different avenues. I think the biggest one is being a friend. So I appreciate that friendship for the many years, which began, I think, in about '84. And so I started doing this work in '89. So last August, I celebrated my 30th year as a consultant in this space. And when I began, I think there was about 12 or 13 companies doing this work. And there's over 400 now kind of doing this work. So this work has gotten hot. It's a lot of people jumping into it. And it's like, how do we really do it in a way that makes a difference? And so hopefully some of the discussion we'll get at that. Dwayne has always been my talent guy. So as we do our work, people are looking for talent to kind of supplement our work to make sure they have that diverse talent. And Dwayne has supported me and many others in that space. So very excited to share this space. Melanie kicked it off like she works for CBS or something. I'm excited to have you here, Melanie. Melanie, like, look, she was like, hey, I got this thing. That's good stuff, Melanie. So let's jump in and see what we have to offer the people, okay?
Let's jump in. And yeah, I think the 3 of us have had search in our backgrounds. It gives you a different type of blood. So I'm excited to have this conversation. So I think it's obvious a lot of us are here today because the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, racial justice is in every single news source right now. So wanted to start off just chatting with you all and getting both of your reactions around what is your overall reaction to what's currently taking place in society right now? So you both have been in the work for quite some time, but what are your reactions to what's happening right now?
Yeah, great question, Melanie. I think, you know, in some ways, we're still attempting to achieve some of the things that we want to achieve for many years, which is kind of fairness, equity, opportunity for all. But I think the movement and the momentum around it is at a much higher level based on some of the incidents around racial inequity that has taken place over the last few months. And even when we talk about diversity, obviously it's a lot broader than just the race discussion itself. But that emphasis and how people are committing to it and getting involvement from many others on this stage is amazing. And so as a person who's been at this for a while, I've seen the work transition from diversity, inclusion, equity. You know, now we're talking a lot about unity. And unity is, let's all get in this thing together for the betterment of all. And that's what you see taking place around some of these incidents and the protests. It's like, if any of us lose, we're all losing. So let's kind of win together. And so we also were in a situation where when these incidents took place, wasn't a lot going on. So we were all sitting on our couches and didn't have anything to watch TV. And that's all that was on TV. If it was normal times, we'd have been competing with the NBA finals and all these other things, but there was nothing to compete with. So the nation and the world was almost captured by, we got to make a difference here. And so in making that difference, it's going to be very important. I say passion and emotion creates the movement, but strategy creates the change. Strategy creates the change. So what do we need to put in place to align with this movement to make sure that things are different and we're achieving different results? And I think that's the role that we're playing, supporting many companies in this space to kind of take this, not only in, again, the racial equity place, but also in other areas to make sure we're achieving the outcomes that we want to achieve. So I'm excited to have this call and talk about that and hopefully answer questions that can assist people with opening their minds on how they see the best way to approach this. Mm-hmm.
No, well said, Doug. I think in not really a counterpoint or a full statement on it, but more there's a broader recognition among more people of some things that have been below the surface. We look at some of the top selling books and some of those other items in society now. I think it's maybe something that many people have heard before, but said, hey, that's a lower priority, on my list.
Yes.
And now it seems to be becoming a higher priority of how do I take advantage of this situation to help my company, my neighborhood, my organization, my world. And I think this is where some of the things we'll discuss will move from, it's nice to think about it, but it's all about action.
Yeah. And I think as you're talking, Dwayne, what comes to mind, because as a consulting firm, obviously they're calling us and saying, well, what should I do? And we throw that question back at them, what are you trying to achieve?
Yes.
Because I got a whole bucket full of actions, but I want to pull the right ones out that's going to help you achieve that what you want to achieve. So action is crucial. We're going to be talking about actions, but there's different places where companies are. Even our colleagues who are on this call are, and some of them in institutions where there's been minimal effort. There may have been a lot of effort, but are you still getting the outcomes that you want? And what type of actions do you need to take to get from where you are today to a higher level of outcome? And that's hopefully something we'll put into this discussion. Yes.
Absolutely.
I have our CBS anchor, Melanie.
Yes, you're reporting live. So Doug, well, both you and Dwayne said something really interesting that, this time is different, and really wanted to kind of dig deeper into that. So one of the things that, we've been discussing with our clients, Doug, is really like, what is making this time different? And I think COVID-19 is one of the biggest aspects. Like you shared, Doug, people are at home or quarantine, the NBA finals and all these other aspects aren't happening, but how have these issues been addressed in the past, and how do we see them being addressed in this situation since it is significantly different?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to support something Dwayne said in that, these issues have been around for many years, but the focus and the commitment and recognition of them being very real and impactful has been enhanced tremendously. And so with that, you get a commitment that is a lot stronger. And so in our work, we talk about the 3 C's, which is commitment, course, and competence. And so people are often asking consultants, what should we do? And we like to say, well, what are you committed to? Where's your commitment? What would you like to achieve? Now here's your strategy or your course. And then competence is, how do you do that well? And so many times we hope for the commitment coming from internal drive, but unfortunately a lot of change in our world has come from external drive. And this is a powerful external drive that said we can no longer say that we don't know. We now know what is our commitment to make a difference. And so, our phone has been working off the hook. I thought I was going to try to ease my way into retirement. They said, oh no, boy, not yet. You got to get back out here in the game. and continue to do this work. But it's exciting because I see that commitment, and that's what I love to work with, is commitment. I don't want to just do the work. After 30 years, I've done enough training and all of that to last a lifetime. I want to see things be different. And I think I have a lot of partners in every component of society now that want to see that with us. And so how do we help them strategize to get to that place? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that I think there's also an opportunity to go from a lot of activity to move to make sure we're focused on some defining results that impact the business. Because of many of the clients and potential clients I've spoken to, many of them are moving the plates around the table, but not advancing.
Yeah.
So I think they actively would like to advance, but can benefit from some guidance on that subject.
Yeah.
But simply moving things around and having dialogue doesn't necessarily advance the peanut on some things that matter.
Yeah.
So that's one of the areas that's so important, that we move to things that matter and move to things that make a difference.
Yeah. The other thing that comes to mind, I appreciate you sharing, Dwayne, because there's a lot of money being spent now too.
Yes.
And checks being written. And we definitely don't want you to take your check back. Keep writing your check. But at the same time, we want you to work on your internal house. Don't just send checks to external people and you're not changing your internal house. So this has to be an external support effort, but an internal systemic change effort. And so that's where they need that assistance. And I love what you said. It's not about activity, but it's about getting to results, Dwayne, and getting to outcomes that's going to really shift the game in your organizations. And each of you kind of coming from different organizations may see different things that are needed to show that this commitment is real. Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. And Doug, that definitely segues us into this next area, really around, like you said, that impactful work. And even with this time being different, we're not in a place where I think checks are going to make the organization better, right? And it might have some great publicity, but ultimately working inside your house is very important, as you shared. And so how can we ensure as leaders that the DEI journey is being embedded from the top down in the organization? And so it's not just an area of our business, but it's really being thought through in all areas of our business. So how can we ensure that that's happening?
Yeah, it's a great question too. I think we have a model that we talk about that's attached to commitment. And it says the levels of commitment. And so the first level, which is not really a level of commitment, is called resistance, where you don't even think it has value. The next level is acceptance, where you say, okay, well, why not? Let's give it a try. The third level is buy-in, where you see the value. The fourth level is engagement, where you're involved in the solution. And then the fifth level is commitment, where you're holding others accountable for achieving results. And so I think what has to happen is that word accountability. Because some people will be driven from internal passion, and others going to be driven because they have to be driven because the organization is committed. And then I think the other piece that has to be real key is we have to move discussion from it being about fairness to it being about value. You will be a better organization. You will be more sustainable. You will better serve the market. You will work in a much more collaborative way. So you will get better doing this work versus you will be doing a good thing. And so that messaging is crucial. And, I came into this work, we were, just coming off of affirmative action and all of that stuff. And we just wanted to get people in the door. But now we want to be unbelievable. We want to be innovative. We want to be open to our customers. We want to get the best talent from our backgrounds. We want to grow our people. And I'm mentioning a lot today around you get better as a person when you hang out with different people. We are creatures of comfort, so we hang out with those who are similar to, but our growth takes place when we hang out with those who are different. and we begin to expand our lens. So often this work has been positioned as something to help those who've been historically excluded. No, you're going to get better bringing high quality people from different backgrounds to the table and expanding your lens on how you see the world. And so Melanie has improved me tremendously since I met her. I am not the same person at all, but diversity it's a female dominated industry. And, you know, I'm a G.I. Joe male type of guy. You know, I got 6 sons, 3 brothers, you know, I spent 90% of my life in the locker room. So I'm a man's man, you know, if ESPN was the only station on TV, I'd be happy. So when I got into diversity, it was like, I remember the first meeting I went to, they said, let's check in and see how people are doing. I'm like, what kind of mess is this? What you mean how I'm doing? I'm doing all right. What are we doing checking in? And now I'm starting meetings off with checking in. So you grow and expand your box of capabilities by way of operating in a diverse and inclusive culture. So we have to push that message. This is not about you doing good stuff. This is about you growing yourself and your employees by putting them around talent that comes from all type of backgrounds to help you achieve the mission of your organization. Yeah.
Hey, Doug, I want to weigh in on that a little bit because I'm not a soft guy. I'm more of a quantitative guy.
Yep.
And McKinsey's done a lot of research that showed that 2 or more women on boards disproportionately perform better in those organizations relative to their industry peers.
Yes.
Disproportionately on the key measures like return on invested capital, return on assets, return on equity. So really hard measures, the measures that require the entire entity to get better, not just one piece of the entity.
Yeah.
Similarly, some data showed that if a startup has a woman on it as a founder versus all males, their performance is better.
Yeah.
There's also some data that's not quite as robust on people of color. And so I completely reject the notion of that it's a good thing to do, because if it's a good thing to do, you don't believe in it, you check the box, you've moved on. And what I've tried to encourage my clients to see, and actually some of the articles I've written in books, are really that this talent is not just talent. This talent that we place, particularly at DHR, where we're placing leadership talent, the diverse talent that I place have faced headwinds. So they got to the VP or senior director or above levels, not at the same rate as their peers.
Yes.
So they had these headwinds. So essentially, if you think about running a race and one person ran at a level playing field or level conditions, and the other ran up hills, down hills, around corners, wind in their face, rain,
okay,
and they both run the same time, who do you want on your team?
Yeah.
The person that actually ran that 5-minute mile but went uphill around the corner in the rain, or the person that ran on a flat surface in sunshine?
Yeah.
And that is what I found. And that's why even when clients don't ask for diverse candidates, and I put the extra time and effort in to get those diverse candidates in the slate, because it's much more difficult, they still select a diverse candidate because they are in fact a finalist. They are in fact really strong relative to what they're looking for. And then sometimes they choose who they choose, but they can't choose what we don't present. But we have to present based on quality and ability to get the job done, ability to favorably impact that business, that role, that scope, not because it's a good thing to do, because the good thing to do is, frankly, that's not going to last. And that's all junior level activity and entry level work.
And I think, I love what you're getting at, because we're coming, we're in this game as long as I am. The historical paradigm is I'm lowering my standards to get different people.
Right.
In the story you just told, no, you're upping your standards.
Oh, absolutely.
To get different
absolutely.
people. Because you're dealing with people who have been through more. I don't even like perfect people. Matter of fact, Dwayne Celestin is the only perfect person that I know. But the reality is, perfect people haven't had knocks. haven't had bumps. And when things get tough, the first thing they do is whine. But if you've been through things and you understand what the headwinds with you or not, it creates a level of character in the person that makes you that much more effective. And it's creating a new model for leadership around interviewing people who have overcome challenges as a way of building their competence to be more effective in the future. And so all the data that you mentioned, Dwayne, if you're a smart individual, you say, well, man, if that works at boards, is there any level it don't work?
Right.
It works everywhere. You get diverse people, it works everywhere. And it helps because the people there get better because of the input they're getting from the different people. Input gets better because of the input they're getting from the different people. So I like your data too, man. You keep finding something, and I'll talk about it, Dwayne. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a perfect combination.
Exactly.
Definitely that you both made such good points because it's really about broadening our thinking. Because I think one of the aspects that you both were hitting on was that there's this misconception that diverse talent equals unqualified or having to lower your standards, where really where Dwayne's data comes into play is showing there's actual really hardcore evidence on that. And so there are differences and opinions around right thing to do and business impact and all of that. But ultimately, you know, we talk a lot with our clients is there's space for both those realities to exist, but there is a fact that diverse organizations and inclusive organizations make companies better and they outperform their competitors because of it. And so what are some practical ways, with both of you having, you know, the diversity inclusion side, but also the talent side, what are some practical ways that organizations can start thinking differently? And even when they're searching for talent, you know, I think the first thing that we talk about with clients is broadening, you know, what do you view as success for a successful candidate? And so what are some things that leaders can put in place, hiring managers, to be sure that we are getting diverse talent?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak a little bit on that, on the diverse talent, give Dwayne a chance, even though I was an executive search before Dwayne was in it. You know, I placed him about 9 times before he got into before he got into it.
Oh, we weren't going down that path.
But when I look at this context of what should organizations be doing, and again, we talk a lot about your thoughts, your beliefs, and then your actions. And so many times when you sit at the top of a company, you're not doing that much work anymore. You're making sure other people do work. So the main thing you bring to the change process is your thoughts and beliefs and the value that you see in this work being done. So I think one of the main concepts that leaders have to take on is that we are better together. We are better together, and drive that message into the belief structure of everyone. Because middle management many times becomes that barrier to success for this work. Because they're saying, you're just putting something else on my table. You're going back up in the ivory tower, but you're going to bring all this work down to me. We got to put that message in place there. And then we have to construct processes that enable people, because some will do it on their own, but to really be on diverse teams and really not only just be on them, but have real conversations while they are on it. What the world today is asking for is real dialogue. So our motto as a company is real people, real conversation, real issues, real change. So if we're going to get to real outcomes, many of us who have come through the corporate ranks, you can get promoted a lot quicker many times if you know, oh, I love this place. Oh, what a company. You know, that'll take you to the top sometimes. And if you tell the truth, they find their ways to kind of ease you out of the company. So I think we have to create corporations that appreciate and love the truth, and then put processes in place where the truth can be confidently shared and used to come up with the best solutions. And the word we like to talk about is empowerment. Our historical word has been inclusion, But if I'm included and I'm not empowered in that inclusion, am I really adding that great value? So we have to be real intentional around reaching out and getting the essence of what difference brings so that we can achieve the results that Dwayne talked about as he was sharing some of those measurable outcomes. And at that board level, they're about that big outcome. So as they hear things that's going to help them, they tap into that. And that's what ends up driving those results. We have to have that kind of thinking throughout. Okay?
You know, excuse me, Doug. I did some work with the Women's Food Service Forum, which is all about women in that really large ecosystem of food service.
Mm-hmm.
And they conducted some studies of their members. And one of their members was a large company that hired, call it 100 people every year at entry-level college graduates, all with really appropriate standards, high standards, not quite Procter & Gamble, but high standards. And essentially they hired about 50-50 male, female. But invariably, the males would get that first promotion, yes, and the females would not get the promotion. So a couple of things one was an observation. When they dug in, they saw it was really the first line managers were grading the men differently than the women for similar performance.
Right.
And giving men positives on things where they were dinging women, and just for might be gender specific ways of handling a situation. It wasn't good or bad, it was just a male might handle it this way and a female might handle it another way.
Yeah.
So what they did was, which I thought was incredibly powerful, was they said to these first line managers, for every person that doesn't get promoted, we just need to have the full explanation of why not.
Yeah.
Because clearly they came from the same schools, the same majors, all the same criteria enabled us to find and select these talented people for our organization. So just help us understand why all of these people aren't getting promoted. Clearly it was more women that they had to do these write-ups on. Remarkably, the women post that got promoted at a similar rate, because those who were performing at the level that should get promoted were no longer giving these bogus reasons. And of course, everybody who was hired is not promoted in that firm. Yeah. But for those that should be, they were. And what that does is that enabled them to go from their first promotion, which they call the broken rung of the ladder. Because if you don't get that first promotion, how are you going to get to the C-suite? Yeah. So by getting those first promotions, now you start moving up men and women in the organizations and having opportunities for success for both genders. I think similarly, that needs to be done on the ethnic side, yeah, where people are held accountable for their performance, not on these sometimes bogus reasons for supporting or not supporting a particular employee. And if they're held accountable, which comes from the senior leadership, that's got to cascade down. I think different groups of people will elevate in the organizations organically. Yeah. Because they will be evaluated based on outcomes and performance, less than on some subjective elements.
No doubt.
But without being held accountable, I'm not sure you actually get there.
You got to work it in. The other thing one of our clients got involved with was whenever you got promoted into management, you had to present to human resources, what don't you have? Because we hire in such a similar mode and we keep hiring the same thing over and over. So they had to answer that question, what don't I have on my team? And had to work that into their hiring process because the company believed in diversity. If you keep hiring the same people, what many managers say, okay, I know we believe in diversity. You do the diversity hiring, I'm hiring my friends. Now everybody had to be in that place of what don't we have? And what it ended up doing was just expanding the mindset of managers around their teams. And so they started thinking about it, looking at it differently, and they created a different engine. So I think what you're talking about, Dwayne, and what I'm supporting is you got to put inside some intentional actions that go. We're not talking about bad people. We're just talking about people who have a historical bias that's going to lead them to make the same decisions they've already made and not enhance this process. So we got to help them. We're not correcting you, we're helping you to begin to make better decisions around talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And that actually, the talent conversation is ongoing. And Dwayne, I have a question for you because, Doug and I have been out of search for a little, but I know when I was in, and probably when Doug was in, a lot of hiring managers told me that there isn't diverse talent in specific industries, or they tried and couldn't find any. And so my question to you is there diverse talent? And what's that landscape look like right now? And and Doug can weigh in on this too, what can industries that might actually be lacking in diverse talent do to help support filling, those roles? Because I know some industries there is a lacking of, and so how can we begin to support that?
Well, a key question across industry. And I think the short answer is yes, there is diverse talent. The challenge is, well, let me dimensionalize that a bit, because we just did an RFP for a large company, and we shared that nearly 100% of our slates have some diversity on them. And I know I work really hard to find diverse candidates, and I can't find them for every slate. Because sometimes there's a PhD, sometimes they want it from a very narrow industry segment, those kinds of things. And so there have been situations where the pool just did not lend itself to that. But those are very rare situations. They're not the typical role that most organizations have. But I think it has to begin with the starting point. If you start, well, oh my gosh, I've got to follow this mandate and get this diverse candidate in the pool, then you do what many of our competitors do. They will be looking for a CFO, they will find a large pool of usual CFO candidates, and then they'll find someone who's diverse that's a treasurer. That's not even a candidate. So that's a more typical approach to the process. But the way I start off is, I know there's diverse talent, my job is to find them. That's why we've been selected, to find the best talent for our clients. And then you find different ways and different approaches to identify that talent. But you'll be rewarded for finding that diverse candidate. And then there are other areas where the talent's plentiful, but again, you can go to your normal well as opposed to this other well to find that talent. There are industries like the guys in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, and they have a lot of usual suspects of whatever they have for their engineering group and some other parts of their businesses. And it may be more challenging in some of those areas, but not for the whole company. Marketing, sales, finance, human resources. There are many departments that can be more diverse than some other sectors. So what I find with them is they still do not actively pursue diversity where they have a larger pool of candidates, and within the Bay Area and outside, for example, and that can apply to other industries as well, they tend to be more noteworthy in their lack of diversity over many years, because there's essentially no reason to do that across the entire enterprise, even if you have those challenges in a particular role or two.
Sure.
Hopefully that helps.
No, go ahead, Melanie. I'm being humble. You better take advantage.
No, I was not going to jump in. You can go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, but it's so powerful. One of my clients was manufacturing and had a big engineering population. And so I think one of the big movements now is we got to do a lot more pipeline efforts to get people ready. We can't just start looking for diverse talent at senior year in college. I majored in economics, and you can change from economics to sociology just overnight. You can just do psychology, but you ain't going into engineering unless you start in the 6th grade. And so this client had a popsicle building contest for bridges. So they went to the inner city and they had kids build bridges with popsicle sticks. And once they won, they got money for building these bridges. And then they told the kids, like, look, would you want to build real bridges? The kids was like, yeah. So you got to be an engineer. Like, what's an engineer? They've hired like 30 engineers out of that popsicle contest.
Wow.
I mean, so we can't wait till senior year in college to start looking for talent. We have to start finding creative ways to build the pipeline for that talent later on. And so organizations who do this well are putting in those kind of efforts to make sure that talent is available, and the talent is even more committed to them because I'm the one that got you on that path. So about 85% of those engineers they created went to work for them because they got them on that path. Yep.
Thanks, Doug. That's an awesome story. And, you know, that's a lot of data behind really building that pipeline. Even here in Chicago, one of the organizations that I lead, we are currently in a summer enrichment program doing the same thing for Black and Brown students, because there's just, and this is where industries that need to develop that pipeline, children can't go to school for what they don't see, right? And so we have to expose them early to some of these industries because they might have never met an actuary or someone in, you know, an accounting role or something like that. And so it's really great that there's some programs out there, and companies don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. They can partner with summer programs and things like that that are set up. The other aspect I think that's going to be interesting, I think Dwayne touched on it a little bit, is like the region specific. And so now with a lot of roles going remote, we might be able to access some more diverse talent for some of these companies with COVID-19. So should be interesting. I want to go into leadership, because leadership is very, very key in regards to making DEI successful within organizations. And so Doug, you talked about commitment and what does true commitment look like. How can leaders, one, be held accountable for their ownership around DEI, so at the top of the organization, and how have you seen organizations do it successfully? So, you know, is that tied to their compensation, their, you know, reviews? What does that look like to really ensure? Because like we talked about, it's thoughts, beliefs, and behavior, but the behavior piece is really, you know, that key aspect of holding them accountable.
Yep. So there's two things here. One, we talked a little bit about accountability, and you hope the accountability will be driven by people seeing value. And a lot of stories that Dwayne talked about earlier, unfortunately, we still have to have that accountability driven by, you got to do it or else, you know what I mean? So unfortunately, we're still in that world. And some people get the value later. They go in resistance, they get this talent like, man, this is great. And they kind of come on board at a different point. But that accountability factor is important. But you also have to make sure that the reason why value is so important, a person's development and potential gets achieved where they're appropriately supported and sponsored. And so if I'm doing this because I have to do it, I'm going to treat you like I have to have you. Versus when I do it because I see the value, you get a different level of treatment. So we have to make leaders develop their people. When I was at Procter & Gamble, I used to get a call like every other month from like the top of sales. Hey, Doug, you all right? Anything going on? I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. He said, okay, if anything going on, you let me know. We'll remove anything going on. Now, Dwayne didn't get that call because he wasn't quite as talented as
I'm still waiting on that call.
But the reality, that was accountability. And my manager used to get mad because he had to report up on how I was doing. He's like, no, this is a superstar. This is a good talent. We want him to be promoted. We better be making sure you're doing the right thing. So that kind of accountability. And again, I think my managers learned a lot doing that with me and learned how to even treat other individuals in that process. So accountability for all of your talent. And that's wherever you're underrepresented. We're talking race, it could be gender, could be, you know, who knows. where you're underrepresented, but you got to put specific efforts, and leadership has to force that. That's one of their roles because they see the value. Yeah.
Doug, I was speaking to Anita Perez, and she was the chief diversity officer for a couple of companies. Nettie's awesome. And she shared an example of that very thing where several groups were not getting advanced. And so what they did was they went to a 2-up program to get exposure to these people who were not typically getting advanced in the company. And with that exposure, they had to do a project. And the first few people in the program, their projects yielded plus minus $10 million of value, incremental value to the organization from people who were not probably going to advance. And she was able to use that, and the senior leader said, well, how do we get more of that? And so it led to cascading that program more broadly.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so I think you have to have some tangible built-in way, because we can't wait for people to get religion. Because there are people in the organization who already believe those things, but organizations with hundreds of managers, they can't wait for the other 95 or 80 to come along.
Right.
They lose too much value by waiting. We need the senior leadership to cascade that thing down and really encourage all of their leaders across all of the functions to embrace their talent in that manner.
Yeah. One of the quick things in chat, there was a comment that I made that says, emotion and passion drives the movement, but strategy drives the change. Emotion and passion drives the movement, strategy drives the change. So I'll be expecting $2 from the person.
We got a lot of $2.
Yeah, I get a lot of $2. Cool.
Venmo.
So I do want to pass it over to Gabby, but one last question. You
Hey,
can get,
Gabby. Come back, Gabby. Come back.
Gabby, come back.
Gabby.
Come back, Gabby. One last question. What excites you about the momentum right now, and what concerns you?
Yeah, I'm excited about the expanded commitment. And as a person who's been doing this 30 years, I've always seen positive commitment. I'm excited about the expanded commitment. Then I'm concerned that commitment doesn't get directed in the wrong way. Because when you're committed and unknowing, everything sounds good. And so there are people like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And so all activities that are taking place to live up to that commitment might not be the ones that's driving the real change. So I want us to be, as I mentioned earlier, strategic in utilizing and tapping into that commitment in a way that's going to get us the real outcomes. And so that's the way I would respond to that, Melanie. Mm-hmm.
No, I concur. I think the openness, I'm really excited about the openness. More people are more open than perhaps they might have been 2 years ago. And openness provides an opportunity to hopefully guide the right kinds of behaviors and actions. My concern is what happens in September, because this is good for July and August, but September is another month and another group of issues can pop up. And does this fade away like the last issue of the day? And that would be my only concern.
Good deal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabby. I will pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. We've had a couple of questions come through that I'll read and pass back to Doug and Dwayne to answer, and then we'll open it up for a brief little bit of Q&A as well. So the first question that came through on chat was, can you speak to getting more involved in our communities to build talent pipelines so we're not just leaning on HR to recruit diverse talent? This submitter in particular loved the Popsicle Challenge and is interested in your thoughts on how successful leaders lean on their community network.
Good deal. Yeah, so when we go into the community. A big part of community work is supporting the community versus using the community as a resource for future talent. And so first there's a mindset shift to say, I do want to support the things the community is doing, but also how do we create some kind of pathway from that community effort to employment with that organization. And I think there's a lot of assessment around not only where's the talent needs now, but where the talent needs of the future. And again, start to building in things that helps that to progress. I had a little summer program, and I took about 70 kids to Google, and they just walked around and just was in the hallways. And I think about 67 want to work for Google now. You know what I mean? And it's amazing because these are inner city kids, but they just don't get exposed to it. So the other thing I think is when you have these programs, expose them, but Google did a great job of exposing them and then talking to them about what it takes to be here one day. You know, if you hate math, it's going to be hard to get in this building. You know, they were telling them that. You know, you have to take that on, and kids, oh, I'm going to like math now. Kids start, so they don't have sometimes that guidance in other parts of their life, so companies have to take that role and get real strategic and get real focused on what they're trying to do as it relates to building their talent.
Yeah, and Doug,
we help organizations with that a lot. Yeah.
Both, I know your summer program, it was incredible, and the big thing is that they invested in it with the popsicle challenge, right? So they actually put finance to that. And then two, you have to understand it's a long-term commitment, that building that pipeline. It's not a one-off and you get, 30 popsicle builders, but it's years of investing and seeing them through till they are eligible to be employed.
Yeah, of course.
I think, there are many organizations doing a fantastic job with youth, and perhaps partnering with them directly, because it's a fair amount of work to actually deal with youth in the community. And you have to try, and I've been with a couple of organizations that are conduits to those. So you want to get with the programs that are doing a really good job and support them. And there are a lot of ways to support them, but I think that's probably a good way to make that happen.
Yep.
Before I read the next question that's come through, I'll just remind everyone you're welcome to use the raise your hand function on Zoom, and I can let you in to either ask your question directly or you can chat it to me through the Q&A. The next question that's come through, and we're getting to the end of our time here, I want to make sure we're being cognizant of that, is what is your message to people of color who want to avoid being labeled as a diversity hire?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't avoid the label. I mean, I've had that role most of my career, and your peers and colleagues will believe whatever they believe. Even when you're crushing the results and over-delivering relative to your peers, someone's going to believe that. So you can't get caught up and distracted with what others will believe, I think. I think you just have to go in and work really hard, work well with your colleagues, and over-deliver against your expectations for your role.
Yeah.
But some people will believe that regardless of pedigree and performance.
Yeah. And what you don't want to be known as, another way of saying the same thing Dwayne said, is a non-performer.
Right.
Forget the diversity hire. You don't want to be known as a non-performer. You call me whatever you want to, just give me a promotion. Doug, you're diversity hire, good. Give me 20 more grand in my check. I'll be the best diversity hire you ever had. You see what I'm saying? So we'll get hung up in that language. It ain't bad language. Don't fight that. That's not worth your title. What you do want to do is be a performer. And next thing you know, you'll be the normal hire. So when diversity hires become the highest performers, they'll be the normal hire. So that's the role. When you get that job, you set the stage so that the norm is people like you based on what you did. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think overall, just consistent messaging as leaders really set the tone for that in the organization. And, you know, one of the things we do as an organization is broaden, like we said, that profile of success so that it's known within the organization that diversity is a value add. And so, you know, we lose those diversity hired terms when we know that, hey, actually, we need this, and this is why, and this is a value to our organization. So I appreciate you all. Gabby, thank you so much for your help. I know that we are winding down on the time here. Doug and Dwayne, you all are incredible. Thank you for all the work that you do. I did put, if you all would like to learn more.
Too. Thank you. Take care, y'all.
If you'd like to learn more about the Kaleidoscope Group, you can find us at kgdiversity.com and check out our organization, or you can email me directly at melanie.munoz@kgdiversity.com. So Dwayne, thank you so much for setting this up and having us. And hopefully this is just the start of more of our partnership.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
All right.